It is Monday. Post Lions lost to the Packers 27-13 as I'm recording this. And today we're going to be doing our first recap breakdown of this Lions Packers matchup. I will be showing plays with the all 22, but just keep in mind that this probably will be copyrighted. So, show some love to the video, but we'll probably revisit this as well. But I wanted to just get my first takeaways kind of video out there with clips like we typically do. This will probably be a little bit on the longer side, but it won't be full breakdowns of the plays. It'll just be me talking about them and then showing plays over top. So with that being said, let's run right through this, and we're going to just go in straight order, the key plays that stood out to me, and talk through them. We're going to start, of course, on the defensive side of the ball, and it was a story of the Lions not being able to get off the field on third down. It was very straightforward early in this game. Their run defense was really strong. I was actually very impressed with Tyleik Williams. I don't know what his stat line was. It didn't feel like he actually had any stats in this game, but he, to me, was a guy that was consistently playing upfield, winning some one-on-ones, creating some knockback, did a little bit as a pressure piece in this game. I thought it was a pretty solid start for Tyleik Williams. The linebackers played fairly well against the run, a little bit inconsistent in pass coverage, specifically Jack Campbell. They attacked him a bit in this game, which is familiarity there. But in terms of run defense, I thought they played pretty well in this game as well. However, it was the third downs that did us in. And we'll go to the first one here. It was a 3rd down and 10, and the Lions go to a cover one blitz look on this first third down. Now, walking through this game, I actually didn't hate the fact that they were blitzing on third down. It's how they were blitzing on third down, which was the problem. Seeing the results, now we did some things differently. We didn't seem to play as much like cover 3 match as we would do in the past with Aaron Glenn. But third downs are the money downs, right? These are the downs where you have to have something up your sleeve. Somebody's got to win. The other team has a specific game plan for third downs, and the Lions were getting burnt on that early in this game. And I think it started actually up front more so than anything, but we also had some breakdowns in the back end. And this first one here, Terrion Arnold gets beat kind of on an in-breaker, which was a pretty nice route by Dontavian Wicks. It looked like Terrion was in a pretty good spot before he separated at the top of the route, so we can live with that, but it's more so the pass rush package that the Lions try to utilize to get pressure. First thing being, I don't like how much DJ Reader is being used on third down. He is constantly out there on third down, and I understand that he had some value as a rusher, and he can be an effort piece. He is constantly out there on third down. I know we're a little bit lighter. Maybe when Mekhi Wingo's ready, say he's ready this week, maybe he takes his place there. But it just felt like this guy shouldn't have been on the field that much. And they started going to Pat O'Connor at defensive end opposite of Hutch. However they would do it, when Pascal comes back, he'll play on the inside. I just didn't like how much he was actually getting utilized in these pass rushing sets. And here they were utilizing their linebackers to try to create pressure right at the middle on Jordan Love. Coming into the game, I like the idea of attacking their back. So I saw something similar, and hey, I want to make their running backs have to step in and pass protect. But credit to them, they did just that. And we try to go with Alex. We set up a stun on the guard. We have DJ Reader looping around, but the running back is passing it off like an offensive lineman. I mean, truly, he's playing this like an O-lineman. And they did this multiple times. So credit to them. They handle business. Obviously, Hutch is having to deal with a lot over there. So even if he does win, he's getting strung out on a lot of these plays. But it was a lot of craftiness in terms of trying to create it with your backers, and it just didn't work. And when the Lions started to get out of that, I think that's when they actually found success. Also, like that Barnes did a little bit here to get some pressure as well. It's good to see that he's adding some of that area of this Lions team where there was noticeable difference, and it's something I'm going to be keeping an eye on as we go forward in terms of what is the actual success level there, because, well, there's plenty of bad things that we're going to talk about. There's some good as well in today's video, but the defensive line, this was something in preseason that was noticeable. Keeping the quarterback contained, I thought was a positive, and there was definitely up and downs in what we did stylistically and schematically specifically, and we definitely settled in much better in the second half, made some real adjustments, blitzing. We'll talk about all of that, but the run defense was really good all game long, really good, really until the end of the game where they found some success. There was a a 15-yard run in there, but it was pretty great at slowing down Josh Jacobs, which was a big positive in general. But it's more so about the creative alignments in the second half when they really started to lighten the defensive line and go very undersized, even in downs where they were threatened to run the football, and they did run against it, using their athleticism upfield, overloading one side of the offensive line of scrimmage. And also on top of that, as we saw early in the game, that led to some problems. A lot of dropping those edge rushers, a lot of movement on the defensive front, using DJ Reader on passing downs, almost like he was their Vita Vea. I think that needs to pull back. But I got a lot of vibes of what we got from Casey Rogers with Tampa Bay. A lot of the versatility, a lot of flexibility, a lot of the movement, using athleticism to your strength. We saw a lot of Pat O'Connor, which I have to believe maybe is some of that too, because Pat O'Connor was with Casey Rogers back in Tampa Bay. I think maybe we should have saw more Muhammad, or kind of figuring it out now after this first game. But there was plenty of things, good and bad, that really intrigued me about Casey Rogers, how it performed this first game. There was a lot of wrinkles, a lot of things we'll showcase in today's video, but it's one of those areas that, to me, I'm not really certain of like, oh, I love it or I hate it, but I'm very intrigued by where it's trending. And I do think the new additions were a positive. Roy Lopez did some good, especially against the run. Tyleik, really strong game there as well. How fast Green Bay was getting the ball in their hands. I mean, it's not only just on third downs, but a lot of these downs, that first read, that ball is out. And that's always a problem for defense. It's hard for pressure to be realized if the first read is open. That's usually going to lead to completions, and it usually doesn't matter if you're winning up front if the first read is out, unless you're getting a completely unblocked player. So we get to this first look here, 2nd down and 8. Lions are going quarters coverage on this look. And again, we have reader out there, but this is a 2nd down, so it's a little bit different. And you can see how fast the ball's out, right? Back foot, it's out into the flat. Campbell covers it up really well. It's a limited gain, and we were doing that well on early downs. We had a really good game plan to slowing down Josh Jacobs early. I mean, late he kind of found some success, but outside of like the 4th quarter, he didn't really do anything on the ground. I thought it was a really good plan. I thought they handled it well. I thought a lot of those players did a really good job up front. It was the 3rd downs that totally burnt us. I mean, we go to this one here, 3rd and 6. Now take a look. Here's where the new additions to the team, that's where that comes into play. And we saw this I say this because we saw this last year with Terrion. Terrion had this happen a lot, especially in the second half of the season, where you would just have communication bust. And I think this is a good example of that. Now, credit to Green Bay for attacking it, but the Lions here showing a 2-deep look, rolling into what looks like more of a cover 1 coverage defensively here. Problem was at the bottom of the screen where they're stacking receivers. DJ Reed's playing outside leverage. Amik Robertson comes over to play over the slot. And if they're matching coverage, obviously things can change a touch here, but ultimately they just end up covering the same guy. Right, DJ Reed's number 1 receiver releases inside. Number 1 receiver on this play actually changes off the release, right? You kind of get the switch release, which the Lions will utilize as well. We saw a lot of delayed releases from their offense in this game, which I did like, but we would do this in the past. So you're kind of bracketing outside, inside. You know you have that inside leverage of your DJ Reed, but the problem becomes here is that number 1 receiver becomes the number 2 very quickly right off the line. DJ Reed, he ultimately picks up the number 1 receiver, right? He sees the switch release, so he sticks with the 1. Amik Robertson, however, is not on the same page with him. He also rolls with the number 2 receiver who he was matched up with pre-snap, and he just stays with him. He just plasters him on the play rather than switching this thing off. So Branch has to step down and take the tight end because they're not going to ask Hutch to do that. Hutch is just dropping out as a rat defender to bottle this thing in. And they had some success doing that, but obviously, going and looking back, it probably would have been better just to have him be rushing in these spots. But ultimately, that's why this play got open. That's why it took so long. You're not rushing any of your edge rushers. Your edge rushers, specifically Hutchinson, is dropping into coverage, and your linebackers are stuffed at the line of scrimmage. Marcus Davenport trying to work through 2 people. There's just not a good opportunity for success here on a play like this. And it gives Love all day to find this route working deep over the middle of the field. Out to me watching this. Now you got your center field safety there in Kirby Joseph, who's kind of just staying in his lane. He's not really reverting to the hash here, and he steps down and ultimately makes the play. But you can see how messy that was, and it really came back to a communication issue on the outside. And I thought this was just good recognition by the Packers pre-snap. I think the Lions were a little bit predictable here. They're giving this 2-man look, and you can see with the short motion by the back, linebackers shift over on this play. They bump responsibility, so now Duracell takes the running back. The tight end is now Jack Campbell on the play, and that probably would have been the case regardless of whoever released outside. But they bump responsibilities. Packers get a pickup on that, and essentially they just clear out Brian Branch by running 2 seam routes right up the field on this play. So they run the 2 seams. Jack Campbell's got to carry Tucker Kraft, the tight end here, and then the receiver Dontavian Wicks gets that inside release, presses upfield. So now Brian Branch has 2 guys to deal with on this play, and it was smart by them. I'll give them credit going at Jack Campbell in man-to-man coverage. I would do the same thing if I was a Lions opponent. I would go right at Jack. Now, I think Jack had a better rep later in the game, but they went after him, and this was already after trying to take a shot to him earlier where they had a step. He just missed the throw over top. They went right after Jack Campbell, and this was the thing last year where it was like, Jack Campbell in man coverage isn't the best. I thought he looked a little bit lighter this year. Maybe he was moving a little bit better, but still, that's a matchup that an offense is going to love. So if you're going to tell them you're in man coverage and you're not going to be dropping this necessarily right off to the safety in this spot, and he has to carry this thing vertically and the safety's pried out, that's just a good matchup for the offense. And it's one of those spots where we may just have to be more aware of, we can't let that be the case. Quick kickoff return play I thought I'd throw in here. I throw this in here because Jacob Sailors was elevated for this game. We didn't have Vaki. They didn't go to Craig Reynolds. And I'm watching this back. If Jacob Sailors goes to the strong side of the kickoff return, this might be a touchdown. Now, yes, he has to cross a good amount of field here, but you get a really strong block from that third blocker over on the right side. Like literally, if he cuts this outside and Stewart hits his lead block, this one might be a touchdown. Now, he starts to work that way, but he ultimately runs into Shane Zylstra. I mean, if this thing's broken out there sooner, he's probably gone. Just seeing this back, like the little thing, he's probably gone on this play, or at least it's a massive kick return versus the ugly kick returns that we did have. It's one of those little things. I know it's special teams, but man, it was a mess right there. Fluke will show is a 3rd down and long. And again, one thing that I will say in this is I didn't like the wide blocking in this game. I didn't like the stretch runs last time we did against Green Bay. This game, we did it again. We just looked out athleticism on the offensive line, if that's even a word. I don't think it is a word, but whatever I just said, we looked like that. We looked like a team that couldn't hang on the interior against some of the speed that they had upfield. And it makes sense. That's how they're built now. They're not big on the interior. So why the Lions leaned into that or utilized that, I don't know. I understand wanting to be diverse in your run scheme, but I think ultimately, and we'll see some of the breakdowns, number one, I think they may have to pull back on some of what they're doing, many mental breakdowns from the offensive line. But two, I just didn't love the implementation of some of the wide stuff. I understand keeping them honest, right? Not just going downhill every time. But if anything, I would have done it probably more so heavy with gap scheme than all this zone stretching and the toss lead stretch. Like those kind of things, it just didn't work. We just looked like we couldn't hang athletically because that's how Green Bay's built in the interior. So to get any kind of penetration, now you're going backwards. And those plays, I just didn't love them watching this game. But we go here. This is a 3rd down and 7, and this is seemingly going to be a staple of a John Moran offense. We'll see how much this expands. It's only game 1. But on the 3rd down and 7 here, they go Tampa 2. They're inverted Tampa 2. This is classic Green Bay in these spots. Safety's the middle field player here. You can expect this. You should have expected this coming into the game. And they're going to run this number 3 receiver Laporta on this deep curl route. And essentially, he's just going to settle in. They're going to try to isolate a player one-on-one here. And this time, they don't actually get the linebacker on him, which I think is the problem with this overall, because you have Evan Williams who's showing that he's buzzing down as a safety, but he's still dropping on this play. So ultimately, you don't really get a linebacker on Laporta. You get Evan Williams on Laporta, which isn't a fantastic matchup in this spot. But ultimately, you're kind of working that route, right? You're trying to have him settle down. We did it later in the game, and it was successful working on a linebacker, not on a safety. But also on top of that, one, we don't have enough time for it to kind of settle in because of how far we are. We just run clear outs on the bottom to try to isolate that matchup one-on-one and just let him separate, and that's where the ball's going, create spacing. And then on the backside, which this is what John Morton would do in the past as well, like he's done this with the Jets going way back, where you'd have kind of 1-2 reads, right? And then on the backside, it's like, hey, okay, if that's not there, that middle field defender, Goff can potentially get back to Jamo. But we don't really have time for that because Sewell gets beat, so Goff just checks it down, and that's how our 3rd and 7 shakes out. So would I say I love that plan? Not really when watching how it was executed. It's obviously not a good spot to be in. But in fairness, we didn't have a great plan last time we played Green Bay on 3rd down. It feels like we typically don't have a great plan on 3rd down. And I say that on offense because I've seen it. That's why my key to the game was 3rd down, we have to have a good plan. And it's never a good spot to be in 3rd and long against this team. And this is also why throwing on 1st down and 2nd down and getting more simplified coverage looks is the way to play Green Bay. It's similar to what happened with Tampa in the past, because you start to get to this where everybody's moving, and it's like everybody's talking about the personnel that they have at corner. Well, trust me, when you play sound and you mix up coverages like this, and then you run games up front, and you have big-time pass rushers, that's a handful, because every time you're trying to get to a look and you don't know what they're getting to. And a couple of times we got caught there. We would check to a play and we didn't have the right look for what they were doing defensively. That happens, but that's why it's hard to live in that world as an offense. That's where you can't play. You have to have that success on early downs. And to start that drive, we went toss lead for nothing, or essentially 1 yard. And then we threw that backside little screen check down against a cover 3 look for them defensively, which is typically what they're going to sit in on early downs anyway. And you did appreciate the patience there. That's going to be an interesting wrinkle. I didn't show the play, but that kind of like check down as a screen option where the tight end leaks out and blocks. Teams like Chicago did that last year. A lot of teams did that last year. I think Washington did that. We never did it with Ben Johnson. It seems like we're going to be picking that up and carrying that forward as a check down option. I don't love it because it takes your tight end out of the play. It just makes him a blocker. But it seems like that's something that a lot of the NFL picked up last year, and John Moran seems like he's going to be picking that up too. So something to watch for as we go forward. Go right to the middle of this drive, and this was the big completion. They had another 3rd down conversion before we started to settle in. A 3rd down and 7 look, and the Lions are going to go cover 2 invert. So really the big thing is here, one, probably doing too much as a defense coordinator, just to be honest. But the big thing to me is also not incredibly disguised. Like when you look at it on the surface, it feels like, oh yeah, single high safety. Maybe they're manned up here, right? You have Brian Branch over the tight end. That looks like some man coverage. I could see that. But it doesn't feel ultimately incredibly disguised because, number one, Alex isn't lined up over the back. Jack Campbell is. So right away, I get to tell, like, why in the world would you have Jack Campbell lined up on the back when you have Alex available? That makes no sense. So I guess it's because they're blitzing in this spot. So there you go. But secondly, and even with that being the case, Amik Robertson is so far off the number 2 receiver, he's probably not manned up. There's a very little chance that he's manned up, lined up 8 yards off the slot receiver. That doesn't make any sense. So while it's a disguise, and we've done this before, that's how I knew when looking at this, like, oh yeah, they're running cover 2, because the Lions do this. They didn't in the past. The problem is that when you carry over exactly what you've done in the past, it's kind of like what Goff said after the game. We've seen each other a lot, so they're going to have answers. They're going to expect things familiar-wise, and I think this was an example of them having that. Now, Calvin had his own wrinkles, but this was a play where it just felt like watching it back, like, oh, gosh, this was not good. Because, again, you can do all these creative games. You can blitz 2 backers, right? You can overload him. You can get some pressure. It doesn't matter when the ball is out when he hits his back foot. It doesn't matter. If you're not unblocked, it doesn't matter. And recognize they were really good in terms of pass pro timing. The running back settles in this time, so they're able to pick it up early, and then they hit the seam, get right behind, not a linebacker, because again, we're dropping out our edge rusher here, Marcus Davenport. So it's an easy window for him to fire into, and they just run two verticals, so the outside corner has to stay outside, and now you have no presence over the middle of the field as Amik is bailing. So it's a good play call. It's very simple. That was very straightforward. That was a good play call for what they did offensively, and they had us beat on that play call. But I'll give Kelvin Shepard some love because this was really I think this is the first third down stop. However, it was good. It was a 3rd down and 3 from the Lions defensively. It was very straightforward. Cover one rat defense here. So straight man coverage, but they created their rat backer. It was actually Aiden Hutchinson. So again, they kind of go to that running back blitz thing. Alex takes the running back on this play, or the linebacker blitz. They kind of got out of that, which was nice. But ultimately, they drop out Hutchinson here, who's out really wide on technique. I still don't love the idea of dropping Hutch as much as they do. Some of this feels like it has some Casey Rogers vibes to it a little bit, where it's like, okay, the versatility of our front is going to be a problem. And I don't hate that. I just don't love it as well, because man, I don't like dropping Hutch that much. But this one does work, credit to them, and that's why they have to bring the backers and try to create confusion. So I think it's a trade-off. It's like, hey, if we're going to drop out our edge rusher, our best edge rusher, then on the interior, we have to create some miscommunication with our backers, and we're going to cross blitz and things like that. But they're picking it up. It kind of shuts it all down. But Hutch did stab that number 3 receiver, which kind of threw him off his route. And then ultimately it helped because he was kind of in the way. Brian Branch worked all the way over top on the tight end here to take this away. So the ball was out fast. Again, look, Jordan Love is not holding the ball. This is what I'm saying. He's not even waiting. There's not immediate pressure there. He's getting a kind of a blitz, but there's not even it's not even really a blitz. It's only a 4-man rush. There's not even pressure there, and he's out with the back on his back foot. So again, Green Bay did a good job. They're minimizing your pass rush. Back foot, balls out, throws the fade. Terrion in coverage. Terrion does a good job here in coverage. I hope he's okay. And this one's incomplete. They finally get off the field, which felt nice to watch. Let's go back to the offensive side here, because again, after some negatives, they ran a screen that went backwards. Decker kind of lost the block in space. I just feel like it gives me the sense we did too much in space against this defensive front. I just think we did way too much in space against this front. I don't love that. Obviously, it's easy in hindsight to say that, but they were just too athletic up front for us to do as much side, as much in space as I think we tried to do, and all the lateral stuff. Now, I like the lateral movement in terms of the pass game. I was with that, so a screen, I guess you could say, falls into that, but definitely not the run stuff. Regardless here, though, we get a 2nd down and a long, 2nd down and 12. Here they go into this cover 3 coverage, which seemed to be a tendency of theirs on 2nd down. They're buzzing down that safety, as Dan Campbell talked about, pressure. And I really like this one because they're stacking up the receivers. You have a upfield release. They're kind of staying stacked, and then they spin themselves out. So now that outside flat defender has to try to work his way under St. Brown. He's got a long way to go. He gets under St., but the eyes of the outside corner are taken by the number 2 receiver in JMO on the seam, and he's just running a clear out. He's not even looking for the ball. I'd like to see him look for the ball here, but he's just simply taking eyes, and it's just simply to get that one-on-one matchup with St. Brown. That's a full scheme design here. That's all we want, is we want to get him in a blind spot. We're expecting this coverage, and that's the attack here, and we have a check down underneath. And he gets open. He runs the deep out route. The ball's in a good spot. The pass protection's really solid. Tate handles up just enough to make that work. And it's a great catch on the sideline to get a big gain, which the Lions needed, because at that point they didn't really have that. And then we go here to a 3rd down. Again, I do like some of this as well. The fast motion was utilized, very similar to what we did last year against Green Bay, just kind of its own wrinkles. Like you're in an offset eye, they fast motion their tight end to go right, and he's ultimately going to kind of set up a block here. So this one is much more downhill, which I tend to like a little bit more. The lead block to get downhill. I thought Montgomery also ran really well in this game. Brock Wright ends up losing his block on Kingsley. He spins off this block, so it limits the game, but they still picked up the 1st down. He ran through contact, picked up the 1st down, kept the chains moving on a 3rd down and 1. This negative 1-yard run by Montgomery. And again, watch this. It's the stretch play. I just don't know why we did this. I just didn't love it. They put a lot on those guys' plates, and you're going to see the guy that was constantly the issue was Christian Mahogany. Christian Mahogany struggled on these stretch plays. One, he just didn't look that athletic. Like, I remember coming out, he was a plus athlete, but he wasn't a freaky athlete, like lateral moving. And I wondered that coming into the game, like, if they're going to do stretch, they have athleticism at guard. Will they run towards Mahogany, let Tate work on the backside? Well, running away from Mahogany, running towards Tate, clearly was not it. Jumping his face over and over and over, it's a problem. And he gets upfield, and all of a sudden it's dead. It's like everything good on this play with Sewell, with Tate staying sustained, Graham Glasgow cutting off his block so he can get to that next level and hit a DB. It doesn't matter anymore because you got jumped upfield on the backside by Mahogany and you lose a yard on the play. Little check down. This was a good check at the line of scrimmage. Seemingly Goff got to this play at the line of scrimmage. He anticipated blitz. You got that exactly. Cover 1 blitz. They ran the clear out route. It was very straightforward they were trying to do, because if you look at Laporta was essentially setting a rub route for Gibbs to get wide open and not a lot of linebackers to get over top. So Goff knew where he was going, got to a really good check for us. that's so important for this Lions offense, so important for a Goff offense, is he has to get a sense of what we're going to get into, which is why first, second down makes it a lot easier to throw the ball, because in that spot you get a lot less of that creativity and all over the place stunts and a lot less games. So it's a little bit more straightforward, and we can get the checks and we can find beaters and we can have the pass pro to make it work. But as soon as you get behind her in third and long, now all of a sudden it becomes very difficult to make that happen. But this was a good read against the blitz. Why not go back to another stretch run play? This time Mahogany does get in front. He kind of closes off his block. He seals his block, gets in front of the reach here, which was nice on this play. If anything, you probably just got to run against a different technique, not the 2-eye, maybe a 3 on that side of the line of scrimmage, right? Don't run when he's losing leverage immediately off the snap. But this time we go behind Tate Ratledge on the play, not working that well. You get Graham Glasgow, who's giving support to Tate Ratledge on this play before stepping up to the second level. He's so late to get to the second level that all of a sudden Quay Walker shoots upfield, and now you create a one-on-one with Tate Ratledge, and the other linebacker shoots upfield, so we're not blocking anybody. We're stretched out so far on this play. The stretch runs, man. They were killers in the run game. Green Bay, again, they felt like they had an answer. They knew what we were going into. They anticipated it, and we ended up giving up the shot play because of that. It gets one-on-one with Terrion Arnold here, working on Romeo Doubs over top here, and Romeo just beats Terrion Arnold in the transition here. Terrion gets out early. He just gets stacked at the top of the route looking for some contact, and he doesn't get safety up over top. They create a high-low. Safety drives on the play, and DJ Reed's late. I would like to see DJ Reed play that faster, right? He's working on top right here. It's like, bro, bail. He bails late here. He tries to work back over top. He's almost the spot to make a hit. If he just bails a little bit sooner, we're in a good spot here. But on top of that, again, the Lions are bringing a blitz. They're bringing the linebacker right up the gut on this play. But if you watch, it's through play action, which makes it a little bit difficult to pick up as well. And as Love hits that back foot, the ball is out. Back foot, spotted up, and the ball is out. Safety drives, an easy read. And even though Hutch wins working from way outside, you still get the ball out just too fast on a play like this. And we don't have an immediate win on the backside. We're trying to work Pat O'Connor, and Alex Anzalone gets just stuffed by the running back once again as they just bring the straightforward blitz. So they go cover 3 blitz, and obviously it doesn't work. And then they score the touchdown on the very next play where they run that rub route working on Terrion Arnold in a cover 1. I didn't like, again, but there's no stagger to this at all. The Lions were seemingly trying to disguise it a bit. They had Kirby Joseph lined up over the tight end thinking, okay, maybe this is cover 0. Maybe Alex Barnes and Jack are all coming. Wasn't. They were manned up. So Kirby Joseph is still lurking in the middle of the field. So that was kind of their disguise, seemingly, that they kind of put on display here. But again, where you're not disguised is you're clearly showing man coverage. So they just run a rub route at the right side, and the Lions don't pass it off. They just play straight man, and that rub route scores a touchdown. Again, there's no staggered depth whatsoever, so everybody's just bumping into each other, and it's a good job by Green Bay. They picked up on, hey, we're playing man in the red zone. Great, we're going to have an answer for it, and they did just that. And again, even though Hutch had a pretty nice little win here, the ball's out too fast, right? 1, 2, 3 step, sets, and the ball's out. And it's like, yeah, maybe we get a little bit of faster pressure here. Someone could have won immediately on this play, but again, notice from Green Bay's side, they get chips on the backs. Just had some losses here, like Tate Ratledge got a loss. Lions got that cover 3 look they were expecting. They had a beater for it on this play. They ran that deep over route by Jamison Williams through the play fake here, and Goff is setting to let that thing rip. You can see he's going to hold that off-ball defender underneath, use his eyes, and he's going to settle in and try to fire that over top. And as soon as he goes to do that, and look, the linebackers of Green Bay, what they always do a good job of, they play with good depth. They typically have their eyes and really good awareness, so they're able to flip themselves open here. So you need an effective run game, as Dan Campbell said post-game, to have that play pass work. Because as you see here with the run fake, notice how the linebacker doesn't bite at all. I mean, he's immediately bailing. There's no read step. I mean, there kind of is a read step, but he's out of there very quickly. He doesn't read and wait till the ball's getting snapped. He reads the O-line, and he's out. So there's not a great sell here necessarily. And because of that, now Goff has to use his eyes to look off that defender before he can come back over top. And when he tries to, all of a sudden the pressure's in his face, and now he's got to flip it down for a check down. Now, what I did like is I felt Goff's pocket movement was strong. I think he left some reads out there, but I thought his pocket movement was fairly strong for the first game. And I thought that was a positive. I thought he moved around pretty well for us in this game, and I think that can carry forward as we go forward. Now we get this outside zone look to Montgomery. Again, a straight lead play, but these are the kind of things, man. These are the little things. The Lions, even when they had successful runs, they left so much on the plate. These are why we didn't have explosives. Plays like this. We just saw the last play why we didn't have explosive. There's another reason why we didn't have explosive plays. Because if you look, I don't know who Tate Ratledge is blocking here. And this is where, maybe they got to calm things down a bit. It's the first game. There's a lot on their plate. They're asking a lot of different types of runs that they're throwing at them. We didn't really have any like whams or traps, but there was pretty much everything else you could think of in this game. And here, Tate Ratledge literally steps behind Graham Glasgow. They're not on the same page at all. They're running an outside zone. He's not filling it all. If Tate fills up field and he goes and hits Quay Walker, this thing is boom. This thing is bounces, a big run. Sewell sets the edge like a monster. This thing is flying out there, but it turns into 6 yards because Tate Ratledge doesn't block the right player. And all of a sudden, what could have been a big block or big run turns into it's a medium gain. It was fine. And that's what our big runs were. They were medium gains because of things like that specifically. And I think I have more examples. We're working against a one technique, and the Lions are trying to stretch things out to this left side, and just notice how fast they get upfield. You don't really get a great drag hand here from Graham. You get kind of that punch, and it sets him upfield a little bit, but you don't get a fantastic reach either from Tate Ratledge. So now the linebacker is an easy field to just step upfield. Again, this outside zone stuff it just wasn't the move in this game, but we leaned into it, and it just didn't work, to be honest with you. And we're seeing all the examples of that. Continuing on now, let's go to the pass game here. We get Jamo for a quick 4 yards on a play like this. This is a 3rd down and 6. They're running a cover 6 defensively here, so they're changing it up a bit. We also get a blown block on the interior. I just want to show this. Tate, this is an example of him just being over his skis, his weight shifting forwards, bad, and now Goff can't look downfield, so immediately the hitch comes out rather than being able to see if he can push it behind where he had kind of a deep in-breaker on both sides. Instead, he has to immediately go to the hitch to Jamo to just keep us on schedule. Sets up the 4th and 2, and this is one of the better play calls I think we had of the game. And I believe it may have been a check at the line of scrimmage as well from Goff, because you can see how much they're motioning and shifting. It was, to me, one thing that stood out was, I think Green Bay came in saying, hey, they got a new offensive coordinator. We're going to move things around like crazy, right? We want to make things as confusing as possible, right? Right now, we want, especially on 3rd down, we want to make things very confusing for what they're saying. Not because Goff hasn't seen these looks, but because it's a new OC and there's changes here, and we just want to test them like crazy in this game. And I think they did a good job of that, clearly. That said, though, we still found our answers in there, and Goff did help us. We'll see one where we didn't. This was an example where he did, and you can see they end up going to man coverage, and they kind of give us that tell late as the safety works over to Laporta here. Goff checks us into a man beater, and it's executed perfectly here, because if you watch Laporta releasing outside and then St. Brown with that delayed release, it stabs his outside corner. So now all of a sudden he needs help over top to meet St. Brown on this drag route. So now the linebacker has to step down and give support. But if you look then on the backside, now there's nobody there to pick up Jamison Williams, who also is getting a very similar look. He gets to stack upfield, and now he's working the drag. So you set up a mesh, but you take the help out of the play, and Goff's able to pick up 11 yards in Jamison Williams. That was a beautiful setup, beautifully ran play, but you could see that was kind of the battle. They were going to, you saw from the first play of the game, they were moving a lot of pieces. Everybody was moving around. Everybody's shifting on defense. They were trying to show us a lot of bluff looks. It felt like in this game. It's just a broken down block. There should have been more here. Watch Mahogany here. So Mahogany, I'm watching him, and you're thinking, okay, if he seals this block, like a duo run setup, it kind of looks like here, where you have Sewell on the backside just creating that hedge block. It looks like a duo run setup, but Decker maybe kind of went off on his own and said, I'm going to slide inside, kick up to this backer, because those vets understand that. But we didn't get that same look on the backside, and instead Mahogany, who immediately gets contact, and even if it was duo, you'd think he would hold that a little bit longer here. He jumps up to the linebacker on a play like this. So was this Mahogany? If it was a straight duo, was it more Decker because he should have stayed connected and taken care of that block? That way you could have had Mahogany step up, so this could have springboarded? Maybe, but regardless, it was a miscommunication up front, and we leave a lot on the table on another run just like that. That was an issue. Explosives weren't there in the ground game because of things like that. Shouldn't have been a 3-yard run. Should have been way more than 3-yard run. And that advantage that we had is not an advantage when you just don't pick up blocks. At the end of the day, you have to play smart. We weren't playing some smart football up front at all. Now we get this 3rd down and 7, and you're going to see here, this is the interception. And it's not, to me, like, first off, they did disguise this. So, again, credit to them. They had a 2-deep look. It almost looked like it was going to be cover 3 on the opposite side, but they end up rolling the coverage. So the safety rolls down. He buzzes down on this play, and then on the backside, the safety rolls up to that free safety alignment. So what that means is that the backside is actually open because you have a high-low here created with Jamo, and I believe that's Jamo and Sam Laporta. The problem becomes Goff's eyes don't set there because he's probably looking at this like it's cover 3 on the opposite side, so his eyes set right first. Well, because Micah beats Sewell so fast, Goff doesn't have time to reset his eyes. I mean, he's already set his eyes probably in the wrong place. So now he's playing that. And it's like either I'm throwing the ball or I'm taking a sack. Well, on this play, probably should have taken the sack, but ultimately he decides to go right to the hitch route. He does see the safety seemingly, and as he said, he probably just put it too far inside. It would have been a tight window throw, but it was still a makeable throw. Just because that safety rolls down doesn't mean you can't throw it. It's just tight window. Now you got to push it further outside. He's got to get it away from the safety. If maybe your pass pro is a little bit better, or without that disguise, maybe he sets his eyes to the left side first and foremost, but ultimately that's kind of the game that you play within the game. Look at more of those opportunities that the Lions seemingly kind of just left on the field here. So we'll go to this first one. We come out with play action on top of play action, right? We've got a cover 3 buzz look, which is kind of what we were getting. You also notice on this play as well, the depth that Green Bay is playing with, right? Their flat defender linebacker, he's getting a lot of depth. He's bailing underneath the number 1 receiver, and then he opens his hips and finds Laporta. So again, they're trying to overload a side of the field. They're trying to clear out that number 1 cornerback. So now you have the sideline, which can push that outside cornerback out of the play, or he runs with the seam on this play, which turns it to a post, which can break in front of the safety. But ultimately, that route that was set up for Sam Laporta, is not thrown because the linebacker plays it well and he forces us to check it down on this play. But ultimately, it still did work. You can tell this is why you had to throw the ball in early downs against Green Bay, because you had to create simplified looks. This is why it worked. This is why coming out of the second half, play action worked, because one, it helped pass pro, but two, it simplified the looks. We had to simplify coverage looks, and this is what the Lions with Ben Johnson were famous for, in my opinion. They did a great job of throwing on early downs and simplifying. Look, again, look at this play. This is our big shot play of the game. And it's essentially the exact same thing. Cover 3 blitz here. Short motion inside. There's the play fake. Pass pro isn't great here. Goff is stepping right into traffic, but it's the same look here, right? You have Laporta who runs this deep over route, so safety's got to step down. He flattens it, but then again, because of J-Mo and his threat over top, the safety who gets burnt on this play, and he runs that deep post route, the safety helps over top rather than diving down. So Goff has that diving route for Sam Laporta, creating their own high-low, and then he goes over top. And there's a nice little wrinkle here because the short motion with St. Brown, you end up holding that rolling down sky safety. Because he settles down underneath, that safety can't get depth. So now you create really 3 high-lows on this play that you can just settle into Sam Laporta.
And I also think with the way the Lions release these routes, it really helps hold the linebackers in check. Watch Quay Walker here. So St. Brown does a short motion. He kind of just walks upfield. But he's a number 2 receiver. So the 2 number 1 receivers, Sam Laporta and Jameson Williams, he's not going to get under those playing where he's playing, especially with the blitz. So because of that reason, playing that hook curl zone, he doesn't really ever get depth. He really aggressively steps down to play the run. So it feels like it kind of holds them in check a little bit too with how they release and who they release on this play.
Because they're showing all this cover 3. Lions are going play action every play. They do it again here. But this time, instead of playing just a straight spot dropping cover 3, they matched their cover 3. So now that you can see that what would be an issue is cover 3 in the red zone. I hate that, but it would allow this Sam Laporta who runs this wheel to score a touchdown. Because he gets out with this delayed, he kind of works in the box like he's going to block, and then he releases, and then he's going to get out to the wheel. And typically, like if this is spot dropping cover 3, he might score a touchdown because you're going to pass it off to a corner that's no longer there, and that's just a scheme beater. But Green Bay plays it well. Green Bay matches the coverage, really smart for a tendency there, and they kind of show wrinkle to it. So Goff, as he sets his eyes to let that thing rip, it's not there. Now he's got to check it down to Gibbs. It's a disaster. Here is 2nd down and 10. Lions go split zone look. Again, they're kind of getting things pretty wide here. It's like a straight outside zone. But again, watch on the backside. So one technique, Mahogany can't reach block on this play. You get a very light punch there from Graham because now he's got to work out to this 3 technique and then try to climb up field. So he's got a long way to go. And because that, you just don't play into your strengths at all. They cross face. It's bubbled back. And now even though Tate Ratledge has a very strong block to his side, and it's like, hey, you could have ran behind that. And Sewell sets a really good edge, and J-Mo gets upfield. You're looking at that. That could be a touchdown. That could absolutely be a touchdown. It's one block where Mahogany can't get in front and can't reach, and Graham doesn't give enough support, and all of a sudden this thing is not there. So Lions will have to figure it out. Either we got to stop doing these, or we have to make some tweaks. Christian's got to get the ball faster. Graham's got to give him more support. You got to put somebody else at center. I mean, you got to figure it out. But regardless, these need to pop, and they didn't pop there. And again, it just gives the linebacker an easy runway, and that's why he's slipping Graham all the time, because Graham's getting to a spot. Graham's not going to be able to mirror match this guy at the next level, but the linebacker can, because everything keeps getting bubbled backwards. It's small things. That would have been a touchdown run very likely, and it wasn't, because, again, you lose one block, and it's a very consistent block that we're losing. Let's stay on the offensive side of the ball here. After the defense did their thing, they got a 3 and out on that next drive. Really, it was 3 straight runs, not respecting the run. And if you look at that linebacker on the inside, watch him. He takes his read step and he's bailing, and now he's finding the seam. So, 1, it's anticipating the scheme that we run with the deep end breakers, but 2, they're not respecting the run. So those windows, those small windows that could be there, they're not there anymore. So now if Goff sits his back foot, that Laporta pass is no longer there. Now he's got to wait longer to try to wait for the high low to set up with St. Brown in the back. Pressure's in his face. He can't wait for that. St. Brown's going to be open. Can't wait for it. So now he's running all over the place. He ends up hitting J-Mo for 3 yards, which was a positive. Again, I thought he moved pretty well in the pocket, but that should have been a lot more. There is a couple reads, though. However, I thought that Goff should have thrown that he didn't. And I think this next one was a good example of that. Now, again, they disguise coverage. It looks like a cover 3 buzz. They roll into a Tampa 2 invert. I think it may have held Goff up a touch here because he didn't maybe get exactly what he expected on this play. So if you see, his eyes were kind of settled in and focused downfield on this deep dagger route concept that they were trying to set up. And it could have worked, right? Because if the linebacker carries the seam, this deep end breaker is going to be there. You can have this big shot play in theory. But with that, Goff kind of took his eyes away from the prize, which was Laporta just dragging and settling down underneath, and would have probably had a first down. Again, you are getting collapsed into your own pocket here, and it does shrivel up as Goff has to step up. But as soon as he steps up, if he kind of tries to get that ball out immediately, he might have a chance to hit Laporta and potentially pick up a first down here. But you're going to see from the backside angle, that thing was tight because when he hits his back foot, he can't throw it yet because the tight end hasn't spotted yet. So he's got to wait a second, or he has to anticipate exactly where he's going to land in kind of that overball route, which he potentially could have. But as Goff steps up, I think his eyes are downfield. He's waiting for that dagger setup. He wants to hit the shot play on this play and probably trying to work back from some points here on a 3rd down and 6. So he's waiting to try to set that up, but it's not there. So now Goff is again forced to try to play underneath, and he should have played underneath here, and he didn't play the underneath game. And because of that, leads to a sack. But that was just kind of, it felt like just kind of how the game was going all game. We just couldn't get the shots. So you start to look for him. You start to maybe try to force the issue. And this was a good example of getting a stop. Kirby had a great pickup here because Amik fell on the ground. You also had this cover 1 look in the back end. Alex is doing his thing. Branch is doing his thing. Hutch gets some pressure. Pat O'Connor got some pressure as well. You can see they're stringing Hutch way out with these tight ends here. Hutch ends up getting the win. Alex should have picked this off. I didn't realize how close it was watching back. Alex just should have picked this ball off. It changes the game. That was the first opportunity to change the game. We didn't. Shout out to Kirby for really saving the day over top. We have the interception that is called back by Brian Branch on a pick 6, which was a 3rd down and 6. Another cover 1, which he undercut, picked it off, took it back. That was called back because of a legal contact by Rocky Sin. So 2 opportunities to make the game-changing play defensively, and we didn't. And then defensively, now we're in a 2nd down and 9 because, again, they were doing a lot of good things defensively in that second half. I mean, they kind of settled in. The 3rd down defense simplified a bit, right? They got off the field on that drive on a 3rd down and 5, as we'll look at it. They just simplified. They stopped giving up 3rd downs. They were always good against the run in this game. Their coverage was fairly strong. I mean, it was pretty strong all the time. So their plan, I don't think, was bad. They just didn't have the answers on 3rd down early until later in the game, but the offense wasn't good enough at that point. One of the wrinkles I did want to showcase, though, was what the Lions were doing defensively. I think this was a Casey Rogers move to me. It felt like we need pressure. How are we going to get it? Let's try this. And in theory, this can work to get pressure, but it can also be a disaster against the run, as we see here. You have a guy like Muhammad lining up over the center. You have Barnes over the guard, over that left B gap, and then you have one defenseman in Davenport. But on the right side, look how wide open you are. And the Lions, they were doing this, and they did this a few times. They did this in the goal line. So part of it doesn't feel like a mistake as much as it feels like this is a Casey Rogers thing. Overloading one side of the line of scrimmage, playing through that side of the line of scrimmage, and then we have the athleticism up front to kick inside if we want to. We can kind of jump over gaps. And here, because the Lions are so small, they just say, okay, let's just run the ball here. And the Lions end up giving up about 10 yards on this play, and then they come back to it, and they actually do get a run stop, but it was clearly for this. It was for pass rush, right? They run this stun up front. You could see getting Al working on the center was a complete mismatch for Elton Jenkins. He gets up on an upfield shoulder. He forces the incomplete pass. DJ Reed's in a good spot, and we're off the field. That's what it's for. We did it on 2nd down again, and Alex actually blew up a play in the backfield. So as rough as it looks, and I was like, why are we doing that? It's because it's one of the new wrinkles. If you want to look for what's new, what's going to be different with the Kelvin Shepherd defense, that's going to be different. That's something that we didn't really ever do in the past. On 2nd down and 5 is run incredibly light up front, leave gaps open and shoot gaps with speed and try to just win with athleticism. But that's what the Lions tried to do. They said, we're going to win with athleticism. So we already see the DNs dropping into coverage and some changes there. Now we're seeing they're just trying to win with athleticism to create negatives in the pass and the run game, as we're seeing. And we go back to the offensive side of things, kind of the wrap this thing up. But this was the sack that was kind of the end, right? It was kind of the end of the game. And this was the one, I think this was honestly probably the worst play by Goff in this game because he put us at the 1 yard line. And if he gets this ball out, we're probably not winning the game, but at least we're not in our own end zone. We're not in our own at the own 1 yard line. All we can do is run the ball the next 2 plays. And on this, we get that delayed release from the number 2 receiver, which is kind of the separator, right? You delay him out, you're going to drop out that corner, and then you can set that hitch down with St. Brown. And Goff would typically throw this. So I was surprised he didn't throw this. We've seen, games in the past early in the season where Goff wouldn't throw past that you would expect. St. Brown wouldn't cook like you would expect. Like, what's going on? And then they settled in just like last year against Tampa and LA. But here was weird because, you have that outside vertical. You have a, 2 deep look here, a cover 6 look, and Goff is seemingly waiting for that over the top to answer, but the cornerback is bailing. So I don't know what he was looking at. Once that cornerback opens, I would have thought the ball would have been thrown. Maybe he thought the linebacker who had planted at that point was going to potentially be able to drive on the ball, and he just didn't have the best timing of plant and just trust it and rip it. So he held on to a little long, waiting for the shot, and then ultimately he doesn't throw anything because by that time, not a linebacker is driving on it, and he's got nowhere to go with the football, so we're getting sacked on the play.
When you do look at it, I can understand why Goff may have thought, okay, I'm going to get over top. This is my chance. And maybe his eyes were under first, trying to hold that corner because the corner does open late and transitions late, but he does bail aggressively. And maybe that forced Goff to kind of hitch and I don't really want to throw it. And then by that time, the linebacker's planted. He's planting drive. I can't throw it now, because that's going to be picked. So now I got to get back to the number 3. And he got caught in a weird in between that, typically you wouldn't see him get caught in.
And then again, O-line is now on the same page. Here we go. Tate Ratledge. Not sure where he's going. He jumps outside. We leave a defensive tackle. It's not blocked. Now we're going nowhere. Now we're living in our own end zone. And that's the kind of things that were killing us. A couple side notes here. Defensively, you can see Alex gives up the edge. That turns into a big run. We're also going to see on the goal line here, overloading that left side. No one's in the B gap on the backside. And the Lions were trying to do things like that, and they end up just cutting back and getting a field. So if you're going to do that, somebody better get a field and make a play. Nobody makes a play. Going back to the offensive side here, and you're trying to create these 1-2 reads. So here you get this cover 3 from the defense. St. Brown is where Goff is going to look on this play, and it could have been open as he gets past that DB and he stacks him. Now all of a sudden he can break the out route. That could be the first concept that you throw, right? And you can get behind that flat defender. Backside route would have been Jamos breaking the middle of the field. Goff can't get to either of those routes here. He's waiting for the out route. The pressure's in there. We end up giving up the sack working on this play. This was Tate Ratledge there. And then I'll finish it off with this play. It just says everything that was happening within the game. Again, backside here. It's a pretty poor help from Graham. Graham needs to get better contact here. He completely whiffs. So now, again, they cross face a Mahogany. It's stretched out wide. And all of a sudden, we can't get upfield. Gibbs can't put his foot in the dirt and get upfield here. We're stringing everything out, and we're going nowhere. A couple of notes for me. Number one, I think you need to see more Tesla. I think his size, the touchdown he had, Goff's trust to just put it up to him. Like, if Goff's going to trust him to make throws like that and just put it in tight windows, I think you have to play more Isaac Tesla than Khalif Raymond. I like Khalif, but I just think that if that's going to be the case, as good as he was, you're going to need to see more Tesla because it brought that and maybe it was just because where the game was, but it was the most confident throw Goff had all game to me. I think you have to have more Tesla if that's going to be the case. You have to put him on the field more often for that to be the case. Derek Barnes, to me, played pretty well. I thought Alex played fine in this game, especially as a run defender. I thought that was in a pretty good spot. I do like the delayed releases as a passing offense as well. See, there's just a lot of things need to be cleaned up. Maybe some things need to be dialed back. It was a lot for week 1 for these O-linemen. I just felt like it may have been too much. I'm going to leave it there, and let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and I'm out.